Now in week 2, a grand jury is actively investigating the Hope Florida Foundation, and the subpoenas are sending ripples from Tallahassee to Washington, D.C. The focus, a roughly $10 million portion of a settlement involving the state of Florida and Centene Corporation. That's the state's largest Medicaid managed care contractor. Officials say the $10 million went directly to the Hope Florida Foundation instead of the state's general fund as the law requires. That money was then redirected by the foundation to 2 nonprofits, which steered the funds to a political action committee chaired by James Othmeyer, who was then chief of staff to the governor, Ron DeSantis. Among those subpoenaed is former Deputy Attorney General John Gard. He was nominated to the bench of the U.S. District Court for the Middle District of Florida, but now the White House is postponing his judicial confirmation indefinitely, citing the Hope Florida investigation as the reason for this. Gard's name is on the signed settlement between Centene and the state of Florida from 3 years ago, when the money was directed to Hope Florida. Gard reportedly raised concerns before signing off on the final agreement. Lawrence, the Tampa Bay Times has been one of the lead media outlets reporting on this, making public records requests. How does it look so far?
Well, if you're part of the DeSantis camp, it doesn't look good. The fact that a grand jury was convened here, I mean, this is, I think the Sun-Sentinel reported, this is the first time in 50 years that a grand jury could implicate a member of the cabinet. And that member of the cabinet would be James Othmeyer, the Attorney General, who at the time of this was the governor's chief of staff. And he was the person most involved in all of this. And if you look at it, I mean, the grand jury is probably looking at whether this was money laundering. That's what House Republican has said, that this is money laundering, potential wire fraud. Is it, it would be pretty gutsy for a state attorney to indict, or have a grand jury indict, a member of the governor's administration, but, they're in a position to potentially do that right now. And
the other side of the coin, in fairness to defenders of the administration for Governor Ron DeSantis, there is nothing that has come out that has linked the governor or First Lady Casey DeSantis to this scandal. In terms of the legality of what to do with Medicaid funds, this is a federal state program with very strict rules on where the money of any settlement would go. Can you explain it to our viewers so that they realize the potential for legal consequences in this?
Yeah, federal law is pretty clear. Money from Medicaid settlements belongs to taxpayers. You literally, states have to repay a portion of that back to of every settlement back to the federal government. Okay. In this case, it looks like the state is repaying their portion based on the full $67 million. Now, the DeSantis administration has said, oh, this extra $10 million wasn't Medicaid money. It was a charitable contribution by Centene, even though the records show that's not the case. Centene very clearly said, you are telling us to do this. And they were concerned, they seem to be concerned legally about this, but money from Medicaid settlements is owed to state and federal taxpayers. And we interviewed 4 former federal prosecutors, including 2 who were involved in writing the federal money laundering statutes, who said, there's more than enough here for the feds to investigate this as money laundering.
When you look at the list, there is no list for us to look at, but if there were, who would be subpoenaed for something like this? Do we suspect that the attorneys engaged in these negotiations representing Centene would also be included, because they were part of negotiations with other states during this very large Medicaid settlement, where they had to come to certain agreements after admitting that they had overbilled taxpayers for prescription drugs. And those attorneys said that this settlement with the state of Florida was very different from the ones that they were making with the other states involved in the settlement.
Yeah, we don't know if Centene's lawyers have, given witness testimony to the grand jury. We've asked them, they haven't said. Their general counsel, this is one of the largest corporations in the world, and their general counsel was personally involved in this settlement. I mean, the records show that we got show this. So we don't know if he's testified. We do know some of the other people who have testified, which is the head of the Hope Florida Foundation, Joshua Hay. He was appointed by the DeSantis administration to that job. He had previously said that the governor's office was fully aware of this and actually came up with the idea to divert this money from the foundation to these other, basically nonprofits that later gave the money to Uthmire's political committee. We know that we saw him in the Capitol, Joshua Hay. We don't know if he testified necessarily. We know that a House Republican lawmaker, Alex Andrade, who's been investigating this, he did say he testified.
He was in the House subcommittee that started the investigation.
Yeah, he has testified. He said he spent about 2 hours talking to the grand jury about this, which is not insignificant. And we also saw the head of one of the organizations that got some of the money, one of the two nonprofits. She was also seen at the courthouse with her lawyer.
How high do you think that these subpoenas could go?
Well, I mean, the highest it could probably go would be the governor, but that's probably unlikely. Like you said, we don't have any evidence that he knew about this or was directly involved in this decision. However, the person who was involved was the governor's chief of staff, James Uthmire, who's now the attorney general, the top cop. I mean, that's pretty high. We don't know if he's gotten a subpoena. He wouldn't necessarily get a subpoena. I mean, these are two witnesses, and typically when you get one of these subpoenas, the witnesses are usually not a target of the investigation.
Right. This is an investigation that has so many layers. It's been going on for 3 years. This is a settlement that was agreed upon 3 years ago. That's not new, but every week it seems like there are new layers, and on both sides, Republicans and Democrats have expressed on this show concern. Akash and Christina, I'd like to get your take on this.
Yeah, the First Lady, as Lawrence mentioned, and is in every article that you read about, and because they think she was linked because she was on the board or was overseeing the board. But there were a lot of other board members there, and those meetings are public. They're all sunshine law, and so I sometimes wonder when you're on these boards, which I've been on some of them, like you have a duty to be fiduciary responsible. So I don't know who's calling the shots, and I think that's what voters and what the grand jury will find who called the shots.
Well, none of the meetings were actually public. They were all held in secret in violation of state law.
Which that's
all of this stuff, until very recently was all secret. They kept the settlement secret. Every other state seemed to announce it. They kept all of this secret until basically they couldn't anymore.
But I do find it hard to believe, and I mean, I know the governor and the First Lady is in every article, but Centene also knew what they were doing too. I mean, they're one of the world's largest Medicaid companies, and they knew. I mean, whether they're going to say it or not, but obviously. So I think there's going to be a lot that's going to come out of it. When it comes out, the governor might not be in office.
And I'm so lucky that we have papers like the Tampa Bay Times investigating this, because there is very little oversight in Tallahassee. There's the governor, the legislature's fully Republican, and our cabinet's Republican, and there's little oversight to what's going on with our taxpayer money. And it's so important that we have investigations like this happening so that these questions are being answered.
Well, even within the Republican Party, there are very strong voices saying we need transparency, we need the investigation, definitely.